Welcome to the Worldwide Doula podcast. I'm Barry, I'm a registered nurse and birth doula, and each week I'm joined by a new guest speaker to talk about all things pregnancy, birth, babies, and parenthood. So it's time to sit back and relax as we get into some juicy topics. Hey everyone, just a quick heads up before we dive into today's episode. We're going to be talking about some pretty heavy topics, including depression, abuse, and suicidal thoughts. These are important, but they can be very tough to listen to and talk about. And if you're dealing with any of these issues right now, or if anything in our chat today brings up difficult feelings, please know it's absolutely okay to reach out for help. Beyond Blue is a great helpline to call for support. Remember, you're not alone, and there are people out there who want to help and listen. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Worldwide Doula podcast. Today I'm here with the gorgeous mama, Sommer. She is the sister of Claudia, the guest speaker from episode 16. She lives in Pottsville with her partner and her gorgeous daughter, Luna, who is 3.5 and has such a wonderful personality, just like her cousin. It must run in the family. You guys were like that when you guys were little, weren't you?
Yes, most definitely. We were the rat bag kids running around the street in our swimmers in the early 2000s.
That's great. So, do you want to tell us a bit about what you do, Summer, and who you are?
Yes, hi, I am Sommer. I am 26. I'm a full-time third-year nursing student. I currently do not work as I'm a solo parent to little Luna, but I do art commissions on the side as a hobby for, like friends or acquaintances just for like extra cash dollar.
So, do you want to tell us a bit about your partner? And are you guys married? How did you guys meet?
So I am no longer with Luna's father. We split up when Luna was 6 months old. So that was in January 2021. Very quickly, bit of a cringy story. Him and I actually met through online gaming in 2017. I was living in Pottsville at the time. He was Northside Brisbane, chatting through like the chat section on online gaming for a while. Got to know each other more. We did, a couple of Discord calls, which is, like similar to Skype, but more so for gaming platforms. Got to like, a couple of weeks, couple of months, and we're like, oh, let's meet up. And we did that for a bit. That developed and ended up moving up to Brisbane with him for a while. And then that's kind of how Luna
Came onto this earth.
yeah, Luna's origin story. But yeah, so since we broke up, in 2021, I was single for a while up until about a year and a half ago, probably like 2 years now because I'm in third year. It was when I started uni, I actually met someone else in one of our classes. He is Tom. He is now my current partner, and we've been together for a year and a half now, and it's going very, very, very good. Emphasis on very.
I'm glad. Do you want to tell us how you conceived Luna? And was it planned or was it a surprise? Tell me about your experience.
Fun story. I can say fun now because I've processed all of it and kind of laugh a little bit about it now. At the time, most definitely not. So Luna was most definitely not planned, but she wasn't entirely a surprise either. So essentially, the initiation of sex was spontaneous. We were in the shower, so that meant no protection. Very red flag, silly of me, but young, in love. We've been together for a year and a half. It was like, oh, it's okay. Like, we have boundaries, we have trust, consented to sex. That was fine. But when it actually came to the conception part, TMI, but pretty much he was like, can I finish inside you? And I said no, and kind of shaking my head as well. I was a bit quiet because we were in the shower and this was his family home as well. So it was like, didn't want to be loud, very awkward. And I thought if he didn't hear me, I thought he could at least see me like shaking my head no. But a few seconds later, he proceeded to anyway. That's kind of part of the story where it's not planned. That was definitely not planned. But when I later found out I was pregnant, I wasn't entirely surprised either because that did happen. And then the next morning, it was like, it had to be like 10, 12 hours later. After that, went to bed, slept. Literally, like, crack of dawn, went to the pharmacist, got the morning after pill, took it, and I'm like, cool, I should be good. I've had to have it like once in the past before. I should be good. That naive young mentality of I'm invincible, I'm fine. At the time I was 21, 22. I still say I'm 26, turning 27 this year. I still am young, but there's a big difference definitely in maturity. Back then I definitely was immature and naive, and I'm like, I should be okay. It should be effective. It's 95% effective. I should be fine. Most definitely was not.
We don't get taught enough about this in school. Like we get told, okay, you have sex, you fall pregnant. That's as simple it is. Wear protection. You don't really learn about your cycle and ovulation, and you don't really learn about how it all actually happens, how many days you have to conceive, the likelihood of conceiving outside of those days.
Yeah, exactly.
It is a lot of naivety as well. Yeah, as you said.
I wasn't on any contraception apart from practicing safe sex with condoms mostly. But when you get into a relationship with someone, you've been with them for a while, you build trust, you have boundaries. It's kind of just, oh, this is all spontaneous. Like, can't be bothered going and getting out and ruining kind of like the moment to go get it. We all kind of do it. And we know the risk of that. But as far as exactly what you said, cycle, ovulation, I had a very minimal understanding. I didn't use any like period trackers because at the time my mental health was quite poor. I had very low self-esteem, so I didn't care for my body that much. And then, with the pill, I never really liked the idea of it personally for me. This is not like my view for everyone. I personally didn't like or feel comfortable with the idea of disrupting my body's natural cycle because playing around with hormones is, I think, very risky business. The wackiest like things happen when you start meddling with them, when that coupled with always hearing more negative than positive experiences like kind of scared me. But I wish I did go and actively seek, more support surrounding this topic and, learning that the bar or the marina are an option, or, there are different types of pills. Like, one only has one hormone, the other has both of them.
Yeah.
It's not just one pill, but comes in different like brands. I do heavily regret at that point I am an adult. I could have gone and sought, some sort of contraception instead of just condoms and pull-out method. Very immature and naive of
So
me.
many people use the pull-out method. And like I was talking to one of my friends from school, and she was with her partner for 10 years. And she said that she used the pull-out method pretty much exclusively, and it worked for them for 10 years. And the calendar method works. Like Claudia, she was on the calendar method. It worked for her for what, a year? And then it just happened one night. As you do, you get a little bit of complacent and you just forget, or you didn't really look at the days that you shouldn't be having sex or can have sex but need to have protected sex. So, yeah, it happens to all of us. And then a wonderful accident occurs, a wonderful surprise. Some not so wonderful. Once it's happened, right?
Just a happy little accident.
Yeah, well, I mean, the best of us are. I was a happy little accident. My parents had twins and they were not expecting a third baby, and they definitely were not prepared. And then I came along and I was very loud, but I was very loving and I was somewhat the opposite of them. I still am.
I was planned. I can brag.
You were planned. That's good.
I was the planned child. Claudia was the accident. I was planned. And then Eve was also a little bit of an accident too. Yay. Planned child.
So tell me what happened after you found out that you were pregnant.
Yeah, did that morning after pill. Thought I was good. Got to a couple of weeks later and I thought I should be getting my period. I can't remember the last time I had my period because, again, mental health, I didn't have any care for myself, my body, didn't keep track of it. I'm still pretty bad with keeping track of it, like to this day, and I know I need to get better, but especially then, it was like I had no care. If I got it, I got it. And I was like, I should be getting it by now. And I did talk to Luna's dad, like, I'm not sure. I'm getting quite anxious about this. And we had a chat and also put it down to, oh, like maybe it's just the morning after pill is messing around with my body a little bit. I'm stressing as well. I'm doing uni at the same time. Like so many things are coming into play right now. Maybe my body is just delaying it from the pill and stress. So let's just leave it and see how it goes for a couple of weeks. And it must have been like a week or two later. And I went, yeah, nah, I can't sit with this anymore. I need to at least do a test. I need to know. The first test I did, it was in the morning and it was, yeah, one of those faulty tests. I looked at it for a while and I'm like, what does this mean? I was getting so scared. I'm like, am I pregnant? Am I not pregnant? Just kind of deducted it as, yeah, faulty. I think there was a girl at work that I confided in as well. And I'm like, I think it was faulty. And she's like, that's okay, just like do it again. And I'm like, oh, I'm so scared. And so, yeah, after doing that faulty one, I pretty much went into work that day. And the entire time, I just had all of these daunting thoughts of like, holy fuck, like, I don't know if I'm pregnant. I think I am. I haven't had my period. I tried doing the test didn't work. What does that mean? Is there something wrong with me? All at the same time, like, I'm putting on a happy face and I was bartending at the time, talking and shit talking to people and serving, beers and like alcoholic drinks and like, yeah, I'm the fun bartender. Woohoo. But like internally, I was just dread. And I did one test in the morning, and that was the faulty one. And then I went to work. And then later that night, I came back from work and I did a second one, and that one came up positive. And I remember just being in like complete shock, denial. I was happy. I was sad, like just running through every emotion to man, just like a roundabout of all of them, not knowing what to do. Showed Luna's dad and shocked as well, but at the same time, it was, well, that did happen. So it kind of a surprise. We thought morning after pill, it should be good. It's happened.
It was one of those, the small percentage when it doesn't work.
Yeah, I say to people when they ask me about this story, I'll say, "Oh, yeah, you know how like you have the morning after pill? It's like, you know how it's like 95% effective? Like, yeah, yeah. Does that 5% it doesn't work?" And like, yeah. I'm like, this is what that 5% looks like. And I hold up Luna. I'm like, this is the 5%. Don't do it.
No contraception is 100%, except for abstinence. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
like, I know so many people who have been told, okay, you're infertile by the doctor. They're taking the pill still, and they happen to fall pregnant. What are the chances of that happening? Everything happens for a reason, right? That's what I deeply believe in.
I do as well. I was like, oh, it's a tough reason, but it was meant to be. And again, where I wish I was on some form of contraception or one of those like period apps where I could track it. If I was on the app, I would have known at that point of time when it happened. I was most likely like in like this golden like window peak of being fertile.
What kind of birth did you want to have?
Oh, like saying before in regards to like my own mental health and self-esteem, my lifestyle and diet and everything was extremely poor back then. I didn't have any self-care. I wasn't, forward thinking. If I did get pregnant now, like what would I want to do? Like blah 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 blah. Didn't really have any of that. Yeah, purely like bad mental health and lifestyle. No pre-planning, forward thinking anything. I also personally at the time wasn't sure if I wanted children anyway. I was never against, like fully against the idea, but I was like, I don't know if I actually want children because at the time I was 21, 22. At that point, I was trying to find myself being a young adult out of school, I should be getting myself together. I should be getting a job or at least studying so that I can have a degree and become financially stable. I should try and find a good partner that, we get along well. We build our foundations of, communication and trust and respect. So, like, I had a lot of that in my head of I'm in this life stage. I'm not really thinking about pregnancy or anything to do with birth. So it wasn't until that I found out that I was pregnant and after I told my mum that I started getting all of these questions like, what are you going to do? How about this, 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 this? And I just got bombarded with everything. And it took a while for me to take it all in and then properly think of what I actually wanted. Like for birthing team, I went public hospital because at the time, like kind of Claudia mentioned in her episode, our mum was the quality and risk manager of the Tweed Byron region.
Yeah.
So around where I live, I could go public hospital. And because of her position, she worked very closely with, the numbs of the ward, the lead doctors in each field. So she was actually on really great terms with the head obstetrician and gynecologist for this area. So when mum found out I was pregnant, she was like messaging him like, "Hey, my daughter's pregnant. Do you want to be Summer's like main doctor?" So I did go through public hospital, but I did very much get that privilege of kind of like a private setting where I was very, very fortunate in that I got to see this particular obstetrician gynecologist regularly when I had those antenatal appointments. And later down the track, when I like explain it, he was there for my birth and delivered Luna as well. So yeah, very fortunate in that I got to build like a great relationship and trust with him throughout, most of my pregnancy. I did see some midwives during those like appointments, like beforehand, where you see a midwife, you touch base, they do your blood pressure and, other little things like whether it's education or any like allied health or support workers. So yeah, I did see them as well beforehand, and they were really great with clinical side, providing a lot of information and education.
So you did get adequate information. Did you feel prepared when the birth came round?
As much as you can, yeah. Like obviously you can never be like prepared for the actual day. And once I kind of explain my story, it's like, holy shit, like it just goes completely south.
Because I know that Claudia, she went with her GP as her main healthcare provider, and she came home and the GP hadn't told her anything. And then she spoke to your mum, and your mum said, "Did she talk about this?" And Claudia was like, "No, like I didn't get any of that information." And she just felt really not educated at all. And that's like something huge that contributes to having the birth that you want to have, being educated about all your options. And in this case, this is what we would do, making a birth plan. Did you make a birth plan with your obstetrician?
I did. It was a rough birth plan.
What birth goes to plan, right?
Yeah, exactly. So similar to what Claudia said about our mum, because of her position, she's heard a lot of stories surrounding where women, develop postnatal depression or are just so frantic because their birthing plan didn't go exactly according to how they wanted.
They feel like they've let themselves down almost. They weren't able to give birth and they weren't strong enough, or the list goes on.
Yeah, exactly. And they just spiral so heavily. And at that point, knowing that I don't have a great mental health, but still at that point, I was in a bit of denial and not wanting help when I most definitely should have gotten help. I knew that I wasn't never really in a good headspace. And if I did a set, like, this is what I want in my birth plan, and it didn't go to plan, like, I knew if I set myself up for failure, essentially, I wouldn't be okay. So I made sure to keep it quite relaxed, quite open. I had interests of what I'd like to try, what I would like to avoid if I could. But, if this happens or that doesn't happen, I was still okay.
Did you want to try like to birth standing up or have the idea of like being able to move a lot during your birth, or did you want to go for some pain relief, or what was your ideal birth? What did it look like?
My ideal birth came from, yeah, like talking to other people where I could. Keep in mind, this was early 2020. So COVID is starting to bloom. So where I could, I was trying to talk to different people I felt comfortable with, even though it was like partial lockdown and we couldn't really go out and do a lot of things. I did do antenatal classes, so that really
Mm.
helped me make my own informed opinion about what I wanted. And through that, I kind of developed my own sort of ideal birth plan. I really wanted to give a water birth a go. I really enjoy like nice hot showers and baths, and that helps me relax quite a lot. So I was like, why don't I give that a go? It sounds really fun, like sitting in a bath, like you're not going to be comfortable and relaxed, like, oh yeah, nice, I'm giving birth. Like you're still going to have pain. I just thought the idea of like giving birth in the water, like, you just pop your baby out and it's just like hanging out in the water and like, here's your baby.
It's actually amazing how babies come out in the water. They just lie there, they just look up at the ceiling and or they look up at you, and it's a lot less stressful for them, even though you do kind of want some level of shock for them to come out into the world because that's what makes them
Mm.
start breathing, that shock. It's really amazing how much water reduces the risk of tearing, and it has so many benefits. And in Indonesia, I mentioned when we were having our chat before we started recording, it's illegal to give birth in the water in Indonesia. And it's purely because, one, they're trying to scare people into coming into the hospital so that they can control the birth. And if something goes wrong, they can be there and they can fix it straight away. And then the other reason is that it's lack of education, lack of research here behind the benefits of having a water birth. So, yeah, it's great that you wanted to try and have a water birth. I'm keen to hear about your birth, but let's talk about, did you have any like crazy pregnancy symptoms?
No, not really. Didn't really have any nausea. I did feel a bit off during first trimester, just very sluggish and ugh. Second trimester, beautiful, golden, felt great. Third trimester, I think a bit of sciatica was giving me trouble, and I got heartburn or like that acid reflux. Not too bad, but it got to a point where it was like after every meal and I couldn't lie down in bed at night to go to sleep because it would just start coming back up. And I had to avoid a lot of like, that acidic kind of foods or drinks.
Tell me about your labor. When did you go into labor? How far along were you and what happened? Where were you?
Okay, buckle up. So I saw the obstetrician gynecologist. I'm just going to say Steve so I don't have to keep saying obstetrician gynecologist. So Steve. I saw him on a Thursday for my appointment. And I'm pretty sure it was then where we decided that I was going to be induced. I don't remember him explaining why, because obviously, usually there's a reason why you'll get induced.
You didn't have any like complications or anything like that?
No,
So there was no reason that you could think of.
I can now. In regards to Luna, like she was cruising whole pregnancy. She was fine, absolutely fine, cruising the whole time, hitting all of her milestones, doing absolutely great. Me, on the other hand, and it was more so to do with my mental health throughout the pregnancy, I had a very hard time adjusting to pregnancy and the quick changes. At the time, I didn't understand why, but looking back on it recently and like doing a lot of reflecting, it was an accident. It was partially non-consensual. And I made the decision to have Luna. There was a portion of it where it was coming from a people-pleasing side and not so much like, yes, this is my decision and I say yes.
Like you didn't want to in the pregnancy because you were worried that what people would think.
Yeah. Like, don't get me wrong. I absolutely love Luna and I wouldn't change that. Like, it was a quite a hectic time, pregnancy and birth, but I still wouldn't change that because I absolutely love Luna. But the decision, there was a lot of people pleasing there. And also previously, just in general, having a poor mental health on top of pregnancy hormones are flying everywhere, constantly changing. So my emotional regulation was really bad. It was already not the greatest because I'm actually in the middle of getting diagnosed with ADHD and maybe some traits of autism as well. With that comes with emotional dysregulation. I was crying every day, and then some days like I would have like a suicidal ideation just of how bad I felt. And I couldn't completely understand why. But then I started getting in a vicious cycle of like, how can I think about ending my life when I have a baby and I'm taking away this baby's, right to live? They haven't even entered the world yet. And I'm thinking about taking my own life. How can I be so selfish about this? And then I'd get more upset because, I'm getting mad at myself for being so down and not understanding why am I so upset? Why am I so down? Why am I thinking this way? So my mental health was doing a very big spiral down. So I think Steve was kind of picking up that I was not enjoying pregnancy. So it got to the Thursday and he's like, would you want to get induced? I could book it for the following Monday because you'll be like 40 weeks in one day. And I was like, yeah, like I can't do this anymore. So I got to the Monday and I think I was booked in to be induced at about 5. So went in, they had a look. I was only like 1 centimeter dilated. They tried poking and prodding to break my water. It's like, we can't do it. You're not dilated enough. So what we're going to do is we're going to give you a drug on a little string. It's called Cervidil. Cervidil. Like, we're going to pop that up behind your uterus so it can soften the cervix. And then they said, it's going to soften your cervix so that we can break your waters in the morning. However, some people can be overly sensitive and kickstart them into labor, which isn't a bad thing either. And I said, oh, okay, cool. Well, expecting it was just going to soften my cervix and it's going to go how they said. It, in fact, did not go that way. We found out very quickly that my body was very overly sensitive to Cervidil and it kick-started me into like full-blown labor. I think it was about 5-10 minutes of it being in.
Oh, wow. So you were still at the hospital?
Yeah. Yeah, I was still at the hospital. Yeah, about 5-10 minutes in, and the nurse was checking the CTG.
Yeah, the monitoring.
She had a look and she was like, "Oh, it's showing a little contraction. Did you feel that?" And I said, "No, no." She's like, "Oh, interesting. Maybe you'll go into labor tonight." And I'm like, "Oh my God, I hope not."
Yeah.
I'm not prepared for this right now. And then, yeah, pretty much from there, it just got more and more until I think about 7 p.m. at night. So I think it got put in at about 5.
Was anyone with you?
Yes, so my partner was and my mum was. It was only supposed to be Luna's dad, but last minute it was my mum. So I got to have 2 people.
Did they keep the Cervidil in?
Yeah,
Yeah, so they kept it in. Okay.
they kept it in.
Full blown labor straight away.
Literally, I went into like full blown labor. I was 1 centimeter dilated, about I think 7, 8 o'clock-ish between that time. They were keeping a really close eye on me just to see if my body would naturally by itself kind of adjust and calm down. It did not. It was not happy. Yeah, at the start, I was 1 centimeter dilated. By that, yeah, 7, 8, I was 4 centimeters. I was pretty much in like heavy labor because I remember them saying like I was having like 7 contractions in 10 minutes.
Wow.
It hurt. And that whole time, I'm like, the fuck's going on? Like, is this normal? But I kind of remember, like, just keeping it lighthearted, talking to mum and Luna's dad and joking around. And I remember walking around because moving was kind of helping me and, kind of come to terms with like, I don't know what's happening. I don't know if this is normal, but it's happening and I've got to do what I can to stay sane, essentially.
Was Luna posterior facing?
Whatever the one where it's like you have all of the pain in your back, is it posterior or anterior?
Posterior. Anterior is at the front.
Front, that's right. Yeah, posterior, I'm pretty sure.
Apparently, those are so painful. That's like the most painful type of labor.
Yeah, so that set me up for my whole labor. And so I was like, at the time, I remember thinking, oh my God, is this the one that's the more hectic one? Because I remember learning a little bit about it in antenatal classes. And I remember thinking, oh my God, I hope I don't have that kind of labor. And then I ended up having that kind of
Oh,
labor.
wow.
So yeah, all in my back. It was very painful. I think it got to about close to 9-ish. My body wasn't settling down by itself. The midwives went and rang Steve and they said, this is what's happening. What's your recommendation? I mean, we've tried doing this, this, and this. What's your recommendation? Because at that point, after putting the Cervidil in, he actually finished work that day and left. But he said, just keep me up to date with whatever happens. So I was like, yeah, what do you want to do? So I think, yeah, the decision was to remove it and see if my body would calm down. But I think I still kept having like heavy contractions. They were really like closely monitoring it and Luna as well to making sure she wasn't getting tired. I was exhausted by the end of it. I remember they gave me morphine to help with the pain. And there was another drug, I can't remember what it's called, but it's to help slow down contractions. I can't remember their name, but I remember them like vaguely remember them explaining those to me. Like, we're going to give you this drug. It's going to help slow these contractions down, give you and the baby like a break because that's quite a lot. And obviously, you're only 4 centimeters dilated and you've still got a long way to go. And then they said, how do you feel about having morphine? Which originally in my birth plan, I said I kind of wanted to avoid. If I could, I wanted to avoid morphine and the epidural because I wanted to do a water birth, and obviously you can't have a water birth if you have those. So I was kind of like, oh, but the pain's really bad. I'm like, maybe I should like give my body a rest because I've still got ages to go. So I had those. I don't remember this in between bit because I was so exhausted. And I was actually talking to my mum last night, being like, what do you remember about my labor? Because I only remember bits and pieces.
Yeah.
And she said, like, apparently I went and had a shower afterwards and I was laying on the bed and, me, my mum and Luna's dad were all talking. Once those drugs settled in, it just went to like, I could barely feel it, but it was like 1 or 2 contractions every 10 minutes. So it calmed right down. And I think because of that, I was able to get a little bit of sleep.
Yeah.
So I think it was about 10, 11 o'clock. I ended up just falling asleep and I woke up, I think at about 1 or 2 in the morning because I could feel the contractions intensifying a little bit more. And I think it was about 3, 4 in the morning. I went and had like a hot shower and I was just standing there kind of like leaning over with the shower, like running on my back. And that was really nice. And Luna's like, Dad, this whole time was like right there, very supportive. I wasn't one for, being touched. He offered, but I was like, no, don't touch me. No one fucking touch me.
Was the labor still in your back after it started ramping up again, or did it come around to the front?
It was still all in my back. It never moved. It just stayed there. So yeah, I had a shower until contractions were getting pretty bad that like I couldn't really handle it too much more. It got to around 5 a.m. They suggested the epidural. And at that point I was like, fuck it. Like, I don't care about my birth plan anymore. Like,
Yeah. It goes out the window.
This pain was like way too much for me to handle. So there was no issues with the epidural going in. That went in, they set me up. It kind of wasn't working. So I think they tried like fiddling around and repositioning it. And then it did work, but it was only working on one half of my body.
Yeah, I've heard that before.
Yeah. So it was working on my right side. So I could feel from like my hips maybe on my right side, just a bit below and down that it was working. I could still feel everything on my left side. once we told that to the midwives, the pain team come back in again to assess me. At this point, it was like excruciating. But also, I can't remember when this happened. I did get my waters broken around about this point, maybe. I think after the epidural, because I was all set up. I was lying down on my back. So I think at that point, like they did break my waters. It was already a lot, but then obviously when you break your waters, it's like that extra like punch in the gut of even more pain on top. So I was like, are you sure like it's in properly because I don't feel it working because I'm in so much pain. Like I can't handle this amount of pain. It is way too much for me. So this kind of bit up until I actually give birth to Luna is a bit foggy for me because I was really exhausted.
How many hours do you think it was between when they broke the waters and it started ramping up and they gave you the epidural and everything until you gave birth?
So definitely from like 5 till about like 9-ish, where my waters were broken and the epidural was in but not really working. So within that time, so they stopped the epidural, they changed drugs, I'm not sure what it was. And then at that point when it was supposedly going in, mum was looking at me and she pointed at my neck and she's like, "What's that?" And I think they were all kind of like talking amongst themselves in the room. So they all turned and I started to get this like blotchy rash like all along here. And that's when mum was like, "Do you feel okay? Do you feel like you can breathe?" And I said, "Yeah, I feel okay." Not too long after, I ended up like vomiting as well. They weren't sure if I had a mild adverse reaction to whatever that drug is or if it was just stress related. But they decided to stop it anyway. And then so I had nothing on board because that second drug did kind of the same as the epidural, maybe a bit less. And I had nothing. And I was in pain. And I remember sucking on the gas like no tomorrow because that was the only thing that kind of kept me sane in that moment.
You probably had so many drugs going through your body at that point. You just like completely out of it, and the pain didn't help as well. So, yeah.
It was really getting bad at that point. But I remember because my mum was on my right side, and I remember looking at my mum, and mum was like, "What do you want? Do you want them to try and recite it, or do you want to see Steve?" And I remember just being like, "No, I want to see Steve." So he ended up coming in, got like very quick handover. And then he said to everyone, he was like, "All right, time out. Let's check how dilated she is and then we'll make a decision after that." And he checked, and I was like 9 to 10 centimeters dilated.
So you were ready to
Uh,
go.
yeah, so he was like, "Screw this, like, we're getting this baby out now. We're not fart assing around anymore. Like, let's go." So at this point, it was like just after 9-ish. So I started pushing. I was even more exhausted from long night, intense pain, chopping, changing drugs. I was starting to mentally give up a lot. And I remember saying to Steve, I was like, "I can't do this. I can't do this." He's like, "Yes, you can do this." And I was like, "No, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm too tired." I'm like, just give me a C-section. Like, I can't do this." And he's like, "No, I've done too many C-sections this week. I want to do a natural birth this
Yeah.
once." And I was happy that Steve was there and knew me to be able to joke around like that because that kind of helped me lighten me up a little bit. Just kind of that goofy, he wouldn't just say that to kind of any old patient he didn't really know too well. So yeah, just having like that darkish, funny humor lifted my spirits a little bit.
Mm.
And so I kept going and I was still exhausted. He was keeping an eye on that monitor as well as I was trying to like push, and he noticed Luna's heart rate was starting to drop. So he was like, "I'm gonna have to get the vacuum. We got to get Luna out. Oh, we got to get the baby out now. Heart rate's dropping." And he's like, "Summer, I'm gonna give you a block, so you're not gonna feel anything from like the waist down because I'm gonna have to give you an episiotomy." All right, like thankfully I did the antenatal classes, so I already knew what that was, what it meant. So there was no like, "Oh, I don't know, explain to me." It was like, "Yeah, cool, just go. Like whatever you need to do, just do it because I'm starting to struggle." So, yeah, gave me the block, gave me a good snip, and then got the vacuum. And that's when he was like pulling as I was pushing. And correct me if I'm wrong. Is it like technically you're only supposed to do like 2 to 3 pulls?
Yeah, so it depends on how many times it pops off. Like, did it pop off at all, her head?
I don't know.
You are only supposed to try for a certain amount of time, and normally it's not a lot of time.
No, it was like 2 or 3 or something. He got to the third one and she still wasn't quite out yet. And he had a split second moment and was like, shit. And he's like, I'm going to do it one more time. Like, this is going to be it. And we did like one real big one, and she came out on the fourth try. And he kind of just sat there and was like,
Ugh.
for a moment, was like, fuck. Like a thank God. Like, I just did more than what I'm supposed to, but everyone's fine. Like, shit. But yeah, so I did have like a natural birth, via that vacuum.
You still had a vaginal birth, yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, Luna came out fine. There was no complications. Like he got her out and then put her straight onto me. And I'm just lying there out of it. I've got a baby. I'm like, what just happened? Oh my God, like this is my child. I'm sitting here like, spread eagle to
For the world to see, yeah.
for the world to see. So many people. Like I've got the doctor in front of me. Like he just snipped open my hoo-ha and like, that's a messy scene. I'm like, okay. So I did have like some good little quality time with Luna. Steve said, he was like, do you want to deliver the placenta naturally or do you want to get that shot? And I said, just give me the shot, get it out. I've had enough. I'm too tired. I don't want to deliver a placenta. He's like, yeah, fair enough. So I got that done. That came out fine, no issues. And then, yeah, they took Luna and cleaned up, weighed her, everything that they do for, assessments. And then I got that kind of hour of uninterrupted time,
The golden hour, yeah.
the golden hour. Yeah, so that's like my birth story. I had a nice little idea of what I wanted, and then it ended up the exact opposite.
At least you didn't have a C-section. You did say yes to some things that you didn't initially want, but Luna was here at the end of the day and she was healthy. But I wanted to quickly say that it's completely normal. Like a lot of doctors say, oh, the heart rate's dropping just before you give birth because it shouldn't drop when you're in labor. But if you're going through the pushing stage and the transition stage where the baby's actually coming out, it's completely normal for the heart rate to drop a little bit. Obviously, you need to keep an eye on it and everything, but that is something that actually happens when the baby comes through the birth canal. The heart rate drops, and that's part of the process. So yeah, I just wanted to put it out there to the listeners that if you don't want interventions and the doctors or the midwife saying, oh, the baby's heart rate's dropping a little bit in a calm tone, you can try and advocate for yourself in that moment and say, like, no, I don't want intervention. But yeah, you obviously have to assess the situation at that point. Every situation is different. Did you breastfeed Luna or did you bottle feed or what?
I did breastfeed, and oh my God, it is so much harder than what you think it would be.
Full-time job.
Oh, not just that, but just obviously in antenatal classes, and you learn a lot about it. Not having children at all, you kind of just think like, oh yeah, you just whack them on your boob.
And they start going, yeah.
But it's so much more to that, down to like placement of the baby and the baby's head, like latching techniques and making sure the baby latches properly. Otherwise, XYZ complications are going to happen further down the track. And then like your own breasts as well of like, if your baby is starting to wean off, then, they're going to still be developing milk per like what their previous production was. So you're having to like kind of wean yourself as well and like, express like hand expressed because they're getting so large and so sore and you're like, I don't feed my baby for like another 2 hours. I can't handle this. So like it's just a very tricky balance overall for everyone. I did give it a red hot crack. I got to about 2 to 3 months and I started losing it out of the blue. My supply, yeah, just started decreasing. I tried a lot of techniques and asking like for different help, like what what should I do? Like, I feel like it's going, like the supply is decreasing, I'm getting a lot of signs from Luna that she's still hungry, even though it's been like 10 minutes. And what do I do? And I tried different tactics to get it back up, but it just went on its own. And I'm kind of sad and like, what did I do wrong? I'm not good enough. I can't breastfeed my child because I'm a very big advocate and supporter of it
Yeah.
for all of those health benefits. And I'm like, I'm not good enough. I can't keep up a supply. She's going to have to be bottle fed. I know she's still going to be okay and like every other child, but I felt as a mother quite like incapable and useless. So that was hard emotionally to like deal with. But at the same time, I'm kind of glad it did happen because I didn't have to go through the whole weaning process. And especially when Luna's father and I broke up and we were doing like, visits where she'd go up for a couple of days, I didn't have to worry about, expressing and then, giving him like breast milk supply. So I didn't have to worry about that part of it. So it was a very like mixed, like emotional thing. And I feel like I lost it due to stress.
Yeah, it's a big factor. Yeah. Stress and mental health really does play a huge part in milk production. Because there's so much great information in this episode, I've decided to make it into two parts. The first part that you've just listened to is Sommer's pregnancy and birth, and the second part that will be coming out next week on Monday is her postpartum and motherhood. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week for part 2. For more information on pregnancy, birth and parenthood, head over to my website or Instagram at blissfulbirth.co. And just a little reminder, the information contained in this podcast is here to educate and empower and does not replace the advice of your own healthcare provider.